Welcome to Law Focus. I'm Edward St. Pé. Let's now meet Mr. Nathan Prescott. Nathan?
Hey, Edward. Nice to see you. Due to the COVID bump, I wanted to say that, we weren't able to come in on Tuesday. Sometimes we film on Tuesdays for the Wednesday show. Today is Wednesday. We are, and I'd like to say live from Ocean Springs. It's Law Focus.
Yes.
Totally live, right? You got up for that?
You did it.
You liked it?
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I mean, yeah.
It's got a little bit of extra energy in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no delay. So right now, if you're watching 10:30 on Wednesday, we really appreciate you watching. So there's no delay. It's live. And guess who writes all my jokes?
Who?
Me. I have no team of writers. I think I'm out here like an island, like it's just all me.
Hey, you got to do that when
there are a lot of people in show business, like on other live broadcasts, they have a team of writers behind them. Now they have to deliver, and I grant that it's very hard work. But I mean, you write all your own stuff, right?
Yes, the show must go on is what I always say.
I write mine too. So I'm looking at all you guys out there on Saturday Night Live. This is self-written. And, Edward, have a job all day. One or two. So I have the jobs, and I come in here, I write all my jokes, present them. There's a lot of live impromptu actors out there that are, they're just sort of, they got all the jokes written for them. It's pretty interesting.
Yes, and
they're much better.
We are having a special holiday show today.
We are having a holiday show. I've got this tie on. It's a little fatter than usual. It's sort of festive. We tried to get some stuff. We were going to shoot this from Santa's workshop, but it was occupied. Somebody else was shooting from it.
I see. Yeah, but that's right. That is true.
Yeah, that's it. That is true. So, welcome to episode 31. It's the Christmas Spectacular 2020. We've got some really interesting topics on it. Edward asked me earlier, what are we going to talk about today? And I think I even astounded him. Yep. So what we're going to talk about, everyone, is the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson sat down and he said, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, right? All men. So, I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't address the fact that it says men, where are women, where's the suffrage for women? Yeah. And even during that period of time,
That's meant to be taken as a generic term, though, right?
I don't know. I mean, all men are created equal. There was no suffrage for women then. Women couldn't do a lot of things that men could. Mm-hmm. And even if it was generic, there were still a bunch of enslaved people. Were they granted the same inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
No.
Okay, so 1776, we got some questions. Now, people argue that, and they say, well, the Constitution is living, after the abolition of slavery, after the women's suffrage movement, those kinds of things. Then, what we meant when we meant men was every human.
Right.
Right?
We said that after the fact.
After the fact. So we got to look.
Oh, yeah.
Well, remember, this ties in pretty well to our conversation last week, and I didn't intend to integrate them, but remember how you said when perspective shifts, right? Mm-hmm. We've always thought, 1776, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, those kinds of things. Yeah. We think about it now pretty broadly, but we didn't always think of it that broadly. And it's nice to have a perspective shift like that. Mm-hmm. And I know you haven't listened to Hamilton yet because you never told me you did.
Well,
I mean, I would fall out of the chair, but my pants are sort of new, and I don't want to.
Let me tell you what happened. I tried to order it.
Right.
When I tried to order it, they were so hopped up on themselves, they wouldn't even put they wouldn't put a video out.
Right.
In other words,
it was just the music. It was just the music.
Very close to it. Now I know they sold to Disney.
Right.
Disney. I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
What I did do when I couldn't get the video, when you told me about it, I got the audio.
Right.
Just like I guess it was.
Yeah, and it was hard to follow. Yeah.
And I don't even know if it was the actual soundtrack or but whatever.
You got the junky version.
I didn't like it. Oh. Well, let me put it this way: I couldn't get into it because I couldn't see it.
Right.
I couldn't. Were they dressed up like these characters from history? You can't see it, so you don't really. You're only imagining. I need to see it and hear it.
Well, you need to see it and hear it. But I will say that just the soundtrack.
I'll try to do it during the holidays.
Just the soundtrack last holiday.
Yeah. Over these next few days.
Okay, yeah, because the new soundtrack is the soundtrack taken, the produced soundtrack is pretty powerful, and that's how I became affiliated with it. And I don't have Disney Plus, so I haven't seen it performed like that.
I've got it for the kids. Well, I just haven't played it.
Just sit down for a moment. Okay. Anyway, long story short, the reason I bring it up is because there's a line in that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. It's a woman singing, and she says, when I talk to Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to tell him to put women in the sequel. So that's a perspective shifter, right?
Yeah,
let's think about that.
That is.
But I want to take it even deeper. did you know it could go? Here we go.
Yeah.
So there's this guy out there. His name is Yuval Harari. He wrote a book. The book is called Sapiens. Okay.
Sapiens.
Yeah, Sapiens.
I've seen it.
You've seen it. It's
on
huge.
Amazon.
It's everywhere.
On Amazon.
And he wrote another book called Homo Do, which is about like how humans are going to live in the future, right? But this Sapiens book is a good integrator of theories. This Yuval Harari guy is from. I think he teaches at the University of Jerusalem, right? So he wrote Sapiens. It's a giant bestseller. But I wanted to talk about it in the context of the law and just to expose all of us, because I think it's a theory that you haven't heard of yet. And I wanted you, because I like talking to you about this kind of stuff, I just wanted to hit you with this. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So we're Homo sapiens, right?
Right.
So Homo sapiens, that's men, women, however you want to say it, but that's our genus and our species, right? Genus, Homo, species, Sapiens, right? We all know we're Homo sapiens, right? Which actually means the wise human or the wise Homo, right? But we sort of braggart about that. But 30 or 40,000 years ago, so the theory goes, there were 6 or 7 types of homos, like, you know, that genus, right? There was Homo neanderthalis, Homo damascus, florenzius. So there were dwarfs, there were large people, there were people with big brains, there were stronger people than the Homo sapiens.
There were a race of giants.
There were all these genus homos out there, which really just means, you know, you're standing erect, Homo erectus, you're standing erect and you're doing those kinds of things. So for years, the traditional science said that the sapiens came in, and because of what they call a cognitive revolution, the ability to sort of understand things better and tell stories to themselves, they came in and killed all the others. You know, once they came to the homeland of the Homo neanderthalis, the sapiens took over, and thus we're all sapiens. And, you know, the whole line of humanity comes from that line. That's the science of Yuval Harari, or one of the sciences that he espouses. But he sort of explains that, and then he gets into something a little deeper. Are you ready? So the theory is called the integration theory. And believe it or not, there's some science out there now, right? And if you go to these 23andMe genetic websites, and if you get your genes done, and, you know, they can tell you that, you know, your
Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.com, you're 0.4 Native American, your people came from Ireland.
I've done it already.
Or your people came from Russia or whatever. Well, there's a deeper take now. And that deeper take is based on the integration theory. And the integration theory says, believe it or not, that we're not all sapien. We're not all of the family sapien. There's been a lot of integration between sapiens and Neanderthalis and erectus and things like that through the years. So now human beings, Homo sapiens, they might be 100 more sapien than anything else, but they may have a large percentage of Neanderthalis or other types of Homo species in them.
That's really interesting.
I mean, I've got a friend that's certain that he's got Neanderthalis in him. Certain. But through 23andMe. If you do the deep dive on 23andMe, then it'll tell you how much of the other Homo species you have in you.
They can detect the DNA of the other species.
Yes.
Really?
Deep.
It really is.
So when Thomas Jefferson was penning the Declaration of Independence, so obviously all men are created equal, it had some problems, right? The problems were it didn't include women and didn't include a lot of other men. But you know, now you've got this idea that, you know, if wars have been fought over skin color or religious order or, you know, anything, you know, power, the pride of nations, you know, imagine what kind of fight could be in the offing of
species fight.
A species, that is scary.
It is scary. Well, you know,
I mean, I don't think it'll happen. I think that we've all integrated, and I think these ideas are sort of dangerous in a way because they do scare people.
But I think we're beyond that now. I mean,
yeah, of course,
But back in the day, you know, I can see it happening. I mean, it seems like you know, there would be some integration, but there would be a lot of murder. In other words, I mean, the species, it would be.
If we had that science back in the 20s or 30s, where we could say, well, that's Neanderthalis and that's erectus.
But, you know, back, you know, 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, when you could see that the species would be fighting among, you know, for who is going to rule the planet, you know?
Right.
You know, and I guess Homo sapiens won, I would say.
Well, yeah, there's more sapien than anything else out there. But another question that's asked between sapiens and Neanderthals and sapiens erectus, those kinds of things, in this book, I'm no expert on this. It's just interesting to me, and I did what I could to both enjoy reading it and then try to integrate it into the law, because there's an equal protection amendment out there, right, that says that everybody's got equal protection under the laws in the United States. But to the extent that it could change things, you're very interested in that. So you've got that, but then you've also got an idea out there that says, who were the sapiens that interbred with the the Neanderthals? Were they the kings, or were they the outcasts? Because not all of them did it.
Right. They were survivors, so maybe it was the elite of the
elite of the
survived the battles.
That's a good theory.
And then and with the survivors of the other side, too.
Yeah, that is really, really interesting. And
but boy, that is a whole different take. I tell you, it's not very difficult to open your mind to these types of things. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a time a few years ago when I was reading Conan the Barbarian. Sure. I was reading that author.
Sure.
And I'm trying to think of his name. I can't think of it in a second. But he had written a lot of things, not only Conan, but before that, and of that genre. And he and H.P. Lovecraft had a thing going where they decided, they set a mythology of the earth.
Sure.
And they both started at that point, and they took their stories from there.
What?
Well, if you look at Conan, it was like, Conan was not an ancient, necessarily an ancient barbarian. Conan was in the future, after we've destroyed ourselves and civilization. In other words, there's lots of, you see what I mean? A different perspective. It's not like, it's like the future that came after the end of our future. You know, I mean, it's the remnant civilizations fighting among, you see what I mean? And it's that's a perfect setting for what like an interspecies war.
So that movie, the Conan the Barbarian movies, they had a whole history in books.
Oh yeah, no, he was a great writer, and he died as a really young man. I think he committed suicide, and he was.
What was his name? Do you recall?
I'm trying to remember.
Oh, it's
Fred.
Okay. We'll look it up.
But yeah, we'll get it at the break. But he and H.P. Lovecraft, they had the same idea of where they were taking their material. Very interesting stuff.
Sure.
Let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Law Focus.
Let's put our heads together on a great staycation. Berry Creek Cabins in nearby Bogalusa, Louisiana is your wilderness staycation headquarters. Cozy cabin lodging for 4 to 12 people with modern amenities, kitchens, relaxing porches, fishing, and a 2,700 square foot party deck pavilion. Call 985-730-4395 or berrycreekcabins.com. Berry Creek Cabins is family staycation headquarters.
Well, Dr. Lauren Timmons, who practices dentistry here in Ocean Springs, cosmetic dentistry, family dentistry, is here with us. Welcome to the program, Doc.
Thank you, Ed.
It's almost a miracle what can be done today. For example, person has an accident, let's say the tooth is broken, they can go in, you can pull the tooth, put the implant in, build a tooth right there, put it in, and they walk out with a whole new tooth implanted in.
That is correct.
One day, one visit.
That is correct. No GUI impressions, no second appointment. All thanks to 3D X-ray technology, which we have in our office, which is a big deal, game changer in dentistry today.
And that's a very, very new technology, right?
It is, and we're proud to offer that here. And then we design and mill out the crowns, fire them in an oven, and seat them all in one day.
10 years ago, that would be considered impossible, right?
Correct, yeah, and we have that technology today.
Thanks for being here with us in Ocean Springs.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back to our program. We're talking to Nathan Prescott here, Law Focus, and we were talking about...
we were talking about that, but during the break, I was able to review it, and thanks for the question. We got some questions from the audience. So the big thing that happened in the last week that pertains to law, the last conversation was quite fun for us, and I hope it interested people. Maybe we'll all think about it again. But got a question. We're talking about Texas versus Pennsylvania. Do you recall this? So there was a Supreme Court case where Texas and, say, 21 attorneys general from around the nation signed up, and this is really interesting because when I was reading about this, I thought to myself, you know, I'm in the middle of this and I'm in the moment of it, and this is part of it, but I think this is the kind of stuff that 20, 30 years from now, people, you know, will look back on and say, well, this is a big important time in history.
Yeah.
Because what's happened, of course, is the president, Donald Trump, has decried that the election was fraudulent, right? We all know that. And he has filed suit after suit after suit through Rudy Giuliani and his other team of lawyers to try to disband or stop the Electoral College from voting,
right.
Stop the ascendancy of President-elect Biden, or who would be President-elect Biden. The interesting thing that happened over the last week, so I think the record now is like 1-52. There's one win and around 52 losses in the court system by the Trump administration trying to overturn the election. The big ticket item, and one that a lot of people looked at, was this case called Texas versus Philadelphia. Okay, et al. Et al. Is just a way of saying everybody else, but I think it was Texas versus Philadelphia, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona. Those are the close states that President Trump lost and that he sought to overturn the election in, right? So this case was very, very interesting. Texas signed up, its attorney general signed up, and it signed up 23 other I believe 23 other attorneys general, including our attorney general, Lynn Fitch. So everybody note that. This is part of the law. There's a lawsuit out there. Attorneys general can sign on to other lawsuits of other states and say, Texas did all the heavy lifting. We do this in the law. Sometimes one plaintiff or one defendant may do a lot of the work and the other defendant will come and sort of tag along. That's exactly what happened here. Texas drafted a complaint, a lawsuit, and 20 some odd attorneys generals, including Lynn Fitch, your attorney general, Mississippians, signed onto it and said, look, let's get after it. Let's take this to the United States Supreme Court and let's try to discern whether there's voter fraud. Now, why was this interesting? Why was it set up? One, because obviously the presidency was at stake, right? It's very interesting. And me as somebody, and you as somebody who cares about suffrage and cares about the sanctity of the vote, we really want to make sure that every vote does count, that everybody, that if there's an election, we want a fair one, right? I mean, nobody has a problem with that, and that's what the court systems are for. You know, if there's some kind of problem with the votes, you know, let's get it to the courts. Let's let the courts, who are empowered to look at the evidence, and ultimately make a decision regarding whether there was voter fraud or anything like that, right?
Right.
So that happened a lot. It happened over 50 times, and one court found some fraud and 50 courts didn't. Mm-hmm. So we're at this 52nd case, let's say, for rough, and this one's going to the U.S. Supreme Court. Why is it important? Because the presidency is on the line. The idea of the sanctity of the vote is on the line, because we don't want fraudulent elections. We want the winner to win. And then thirdly, because stuff we've talked about throughout Law Focus, we got 3 justices on the 3 of 9, 1/3 of the court on the United States Supreme Court appointed by President Trump. We've got Amy Coney Barrett, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, right? Mm-hmm. So you got 3 justices. That's 3 of 9. 3 of the 9 most powerful people in the world, definitely in the United States, were appointed by President Trump and confirmed by a Republican Senate, right? So you're thinking to yourself, oh no, this is about to get interesting, right? Because you've got these 3 justices out there, and you've got a conservative court, or a court nominated mainly by Republicans, so you've got at least 5 of the 9 out there like that. And you're saying, so you got Clarence Thomas and Alito on the other side, so that's 5. So Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, Alito, Thomas. So you got 5. All it takes is 5, right? So you got 5 judges out there, 5 justices. Oh, and Roberts. So you got 6. So you got 6 justices out there appointed by Republican presidents, right? So, you know, if you were rooting for an upheaval, you say, well, we got it in the bag. And if you're rooting for President-elect Biden to go ahead and ascend, then you're saying, well, the books are cooked, right? It's over. I don't know what you think, Edward, but it looks like the Supreme Court was independent. So what happened was Texas versus Pennsylvania. These are big states: Texas, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, right? Everybody's coming hard at them. Pop, 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 pop. You got 20 attorneys general fighting. You got you got a Supreme Court that's disinterested but was appointed by a Republican government. What does the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court gets this case up, Texas versus Pennsylvania et al., and it does. It writes a less than 1 page denial of the case and says, goodbye. It says, Texas, you don't have standing to sue. And that's over. We ended it, just like that. There was a dissent from Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. Alito just said, hey, look, you might have had standing, but I wouldn't have granted any other relief. And Thomas didn't say anything. He doesn't talk a lot. You know, that's what Supreme Court jurists would tell you. And he just sort of signed off on the Alito dissent. But Alito didn't say I would overturn it. He just said, you know, maybe they had standing, but I wouldn't have changed anything, so the way I read it. I read it last night, and I thought to myself, man, you know, sometimes when I practice law, I get really deep into it, you know, and I'll write and write and write, and then the judge writes something, and you're like, well, this is all I get? Like, I put all this effort into it, and I get a 1 page? Well, imagine Texas. This is the state of Texas, and 20 other states have signed up, and they're really gearing up for this Conan the Barbarian style war, and they're getting ready, and it's all in the press, and CNN's covering it, and Fox News, and OANN, and Newsmax, and every news media is just bringing it on. Donald Trump is pumping it up and saying, all my Twitter followers, please watch this case. And then last Friday night, the opinion comes down and says, you don't have standing, the case is dismissed, and all the issues are moot. And that's the end.
That's how it works.
What are you smiling about? Isn't that wild?
I mean, I think that what it shows you is that, you know, that it works.
The system works?
The system works because, I mean, if there's no merit, there's no merit.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna opine there. What I am gonna say is, you know, there's a standing issue, and sometimes, even when it's the biggest case in the nation,
yeah,
if you don't follow all your P's and Q's, they could just throw you out. Isn't that scary?
Yeah. Well,
and that's why you need a lawyer sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm glad.
I was astounded by it.
I mean,
I was astounded by the brevity of the opinion. Essentially, they said, you don't have standing, you're out. You know, and President Trump comes out and says, you know, that was cowardly, there's no wisdom there, there's no courage there, but he appointed him, you know? And I think that what a lot of Americans are seeing, and you know, I guess it depends. Maybe there'll be a day when it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, and we can all sort of just, maybe we'll ease into some kind of, like, you know how you ease into a nice pool, you know, a warm pool in the summer. Maybe we can just ease into that kind of,
you know, I mean,
that kind of satisfaction with each other.
Where you stand on the political side, you know, right or left, you know, Democrat, Republican, you know, it is, if it is what it is, at least we know that the judges are judging based on the facts, and there's no emotion involved.
Right.
And simple as that. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'd say I'm glad that I'm glad that the judges have shot straight with the nation and not prolong the agony for political, you know,
yeah, right,
leanings. You know?
And it seems very American, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, it seems
really
very,
does.
it seems very checks and balances.
It does.
I mean, it seems coolly
that's
checks.
a good thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've got an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch.
And they just over by, you know.
So maybe Thomas Jefferson, even though he slighted some people in that, maybe he slighted the Neanderthals, slighted the women, slighted the enslaved peoples. But maybe he had something going on.
That's right. You know, I mean, if you look at the Aboriginal history of America,
right,
which I was reading recently, you will find.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that.
A little bit of a.
I got some. Yeah,
it's a different take on a lot of historical events. You know.
Right.
You know.
But this case came up, man. I am talking about. If you're a practitioner of law,
it's a big case. I mean,
well, it's huge. It's as big as it gets.
In your business, this is like.
This is popcorn popping stuff. Yeah. You know, pop the popcorn, wait for the opinion, and then just plop. But you know what made me really cool? Because, you know, you know who I am. Y'all hopefully you met me through the show. I'm just a practitioner. I'm just a guy that practiced law down here in Mississippi, and I enjoy it, obviously. But sometimes I get goose-egged like that, or disappointed by a judge's opinion. It gave me a lot of, I don't know, it made me feel connected to other lawyers and other people more powerful than I when 22 states line up to go to the Supreme Court, and then everybody is behind them. You got at least 70 million people backing them and hoping that they win,
Yeah.
And then one-page opinion, shorter than this piece of legal paper, says nope. The finality of it.
The finality.
There's no appeal.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
It's a good system, or it's a system. It is a system that we've come to love and honor, and it has been stress tested immensely over the last 4 years, and then with Bush v. Gore, it was stress tested.
Yeah.
And with this election and COVID, it's been stress tested. But if there's something we can take out of, it's our last episode of the year, but if there's something that we can take out of the year is, we're walking, there's COVID's burning out there. It's killed over 300,000 Americans, and, rest in peace, that's more than World War II. Can you believe that? That's a lot of Americans, brother.
Yeah.
So we got over 300,000 Americans dead. We have the most contested election in the history of our nation, I would say.
Yeah.
With just the most vitriol and ire.
Yeah.
And yet we're still sort of a community, and a community of Americans and a community of Mississippians. I still go to the courthouse and people are talking, people are communicating. You and I are communicating no matter what realm of the political spectrum we are. I'm talking with friends who have different views than I do and that I have different views of. And now we've got this news about the Sapiens and the Neanderthals. But we're all still trying to get along here in our small corner of the world, and that's very meaningful to me. That's very meaningful to me, Edward. I want to stress how meaningful it is to me. I love it.
There was something interesting recently. There's a scientist, an Israeli scientist, who has a book coming out, and he is at the highest levels of education and aeronautic science in Israel and across the planet, right? And he came out recently in an interview preceding his book and talking about how Trump knows of an intergalactic federation, which is out there, which is ready to get in touch with the planet here, but won't, because of course we're not ready for it.
Oh, you think?
And so the scientist said that he is aware of Trump's knowledge of this.
Are we still going to be able to get along after this happens, Edward?
And so we were talking about the different Sapiens and the Neanderthals. Well, let's take it to that level. He said that Trump is aware of it, but they did not release the information. And this guy's like one of the most respected aeronautical scientists in the world. He's not a guy who's a UFO guy,
Right.
He said and he spelled it out. He said that Trump he knows that Trump is aware of it. They've had the communications, but Trump cannot release it because they're afraid of what will happen, with panic and such. And now, how's that?
Which is also very interesting, Edward. Also very interesting. I like it all. And I think that if we can make it through COVID, which we're trying to, and make it through a terribly vitriolic election, and make it through this, obviously my announcement on Law Focus that there's integration theory out there is going to cause waves throughout the international community. But if we can make it through all of those things and wish each other Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and Happy New Year, and look forward to another year of Law Focus and me solo without writers telling jokes on Law Focus, then I think we can do it with the aliens. I think we can deal with the aliens.
On that note, I'm getting our cues. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, man. I look forward to seeing you in 2021. Happy holidays, everyone. We really appreciate you watching. 2021 is going to be radical. It really can't be any harder.
It'll be better.
So let's do it.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.